Welcome everyone to Horror Movies Hub Presents. I am your host, Carter Lee, and joining me in this episode is the Intern of Evil, Christian Conley. Hello, Christian.
Hello, Carter. How are you today?
I'm amazing. I get to do two of my favorite things in the nerdum world of mine today. Record a podcast on horror movies and later record a wrestling podcast.
They don't seem to mix too well, do they?
No. Well, when horror is brought to wrestling, like The Undertaker or The Fiend, it usually works, not always, like the Dungeon of Doom. But when wrestling is brought into horror movies, I have never seen that work.
I'm surprised it's even a thing. I had never even heard of that.
Yeah, there's like zombies versus wrestlers, and as delightful as that sounds. And there are some others, and it's just not good.
Oh my goodness. We're going to have to watch this.
But speaking of wrestling, I'm going to steal your segue from the first time we attempted to record this and it got messed up. We will be reviewing and taking a look at Oculus, 2013's Oculus. And it's such a good movie. So it is WWE Studios is one of the production companies. However, they slapped their name on it after this movie was completed. So then give them credit for having enough brains to know they should be a part of this. And we should all be thankful that they weren't actually a part of this. So it's very good.
Goodness, poor WWE.
Oh, yeah, poor going company that calls in every show and doesn't care about their fans. Poor WWE. Don't even get me started on the plane ride from hell.
I'm not. We should probably go back.
Okay, fine. We'll talk about it. But listen to Smart Wrestling Fan, where later I will be talking about it.
Wow.
Did you know Ric Flair's been canceled? That's the whole thing. Did you know that?
Oh,
Ric Flair's been canceled.
Oculus.
Tommy Dreamer is suspended. All right, I'll probably end that out. Okay.
No good.
So, Oculus. Let's get into it. Okay. So, this stars, it was co-written by Mike Flanagan alongside Jeff Howard. And they worked together on quite a few pieces. This is what set Flanagan on, or what put Flanagan on the map. As horror fans most likely know, he has gone on to do what I think is one of the greatest ghost stories ever told in the Haunting of Hill House miniseries on Netflix, as well as the Haunting of Bly Manor, the upcoming Midnight Mass. He's also done hit movies, Gerald's Game, Hush, which was very good, and the only good Ouija movie, which is Ouija Origin of Evil. This is what all started it. It was based on his 2006 short called Oculus Chapter 3, The Man with the Plan. And several studios did approach him in 2006 and 2007 saying they wanted to make a full-length feature of his short, but they wanted to do it found footage style. And thankfully for us, Flanagan refused. And you fast forward, 7 years later past that, and we get this movie.
And it was a beautiful, beautiful movie.
Oh, it's just so for those that may be new to our very new podcast, so you're all new. If you missed the Poltergeist episode in the inaugural podcast or episode of HMH Presents, Christian Conley is Final Girl Productions' Intern of Evil and Horror Movies Hub. And the deal with Christian, who, by the way, just celebrated his 19th birthday. So happy birthday, Christian.
Thank you.
Yeah, so he is new to horror movies. So I thought it would be fun if he hopped on this podcast with me frequently to revisit some classic horror movies, some modern classics like Oculus, and we kind of take this journey with him because any kind of longtime fan of horror movies, we've seen this stuff a bunch, so now we get to kind of revisit it again through his eyes, which I think are cool. And along the way, I'll drop some fear facts and neat little tidbits, and we'll just discuss the movie. So the last time you and I spoke, Christian, we covered a family-friendly horror movie called Poltergeist.
And then you kind of flipped it around on me by setting the Oculus.
Yeah, I thought that this would be a good change of pace, a good paradigm. It's like, here's something that gently gets you into the genre. Now let's see what you can handle.
You changed it from a light jog to a 100-meter relay.
I really did. Yes, it is very different.
Yes.
All right. So what I like about this movie is it takes place. Well, I guess first let's go through some bare bones of it. The film has an amazing cast.
Mm-hmm.
And that, so we have Karen Gillan, who plays Kaylee Russell. This was also Gillan's first major U.S. produced movie.
Yeah.
U.S. made movie. A lot of people will know her. Well, now they know her from Guardians of the Galaxy and other things.
Nebula,
yes. Yes. But before this, she was famous for Doctor Who. And that's actually how Flanagan first saw her and knew that he wanted to cast her right away.
Gosh, yeah, I never watched Doctor Who.
No. My nerdum only allows so much. I can do Marvel, I can do wrestling, Star Wars, and horror, but I got to draw a line somewhere. I went ahead with are there like 15 different iterations of Doctor Who? I don't know. Yeah, so it just seems too overwhelming for me to get into at my advanced age. So it stars Karen Gillan. She plays Kaylee Russell. Where this takes place in two different timelines. So young Kaylee is played by Annalise Basso. I think that's how you probably Basso. Let's see. Marie Russell is played by Katie Sackhoff. Alan Russell is played by Rory Cochrane, and if it looked like, and Alan Russell is the father in this story, and if it looked like he was constantly about to sneeze or had a cold, that's because he had the flu during production.
Oh.
So, yes, that's pretty interesting. And, or just, a little fun fact there. And let's see, young Tim is played by Garrett Ryan. And we also get Marisol Chavez, who we'll get into during the talking of the film, but that's played by Mike Flanagan's wife, Kate Siegel, who is also, really? And she was also in Gerald's Game, did awesome, great job in that, and she was also in Hush, which we eventually will definitely talk about, because I just love that movie. So I believe this movie was made with $5 million budget and ended up raking in a worldwide box office of $44 million. So not bad at all, especially for the first, major production done by Flanagan. So it was definitely successful, received rave reviews by critics and audiences alike. And if anything, I'm just disappointed there hasn't been a sequel yet. Not that it needs one, but I just want more.
Yeah, you know what? It's sequelitis. I don't want it to touch this movie. I love this movie. I don't want it to suffer from a terrible sequel. Not to say I don't trust Flanagan, but I don't touch. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, exactly. And it really, to me, is, well, we'll get to it. It might take away from the ending. So this movie takes place on two different timelines, 2002 and 2013. And I like that a lot, because usually when movies incorporate two different timelines, it goes back farther than 11 years, and I like that it still feels modern no matter which area we flash to.
To the old ages of 2002.
Right, where phones flipped open, and now we're coming back to phones flipping open. So, I should have just held on to my razor. All right. So this movie wastes no time. In the beginning of the film, right away, we see trouble.
Yeah.
And so we see that the children are trying to open the front door in the middle of the night. And that's where we, for the first time, see young Kaylee and her younger brother, Tim, who's the younger one's played by Garrett Ryan. And they're trying to obviously escape the house. They hear footsteps and they turn around and they see someone carrying a gun. And so the young man ends up holding a gun. So the brother gets the gun, he points it, and he's about to pull the trigger. And then we flash forward to 2013, and it's Tim all grown up talking to a psychiatrist in a psychiatric hospital. right? And basically what we get from this whole thing is that some crap went down in his childhood, but his doctor feels like it's time for him to be discharged.
Quotation on crap.
Yeah.
Borderline just PTSD, trauma, all that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yes.
boy.
And ghost stories in general have largely been allegories for child abuse and child sex abuse. And this steps out of that a little bit, but still stays in it, which is the whole idea of ghosts haunting you is you can't escape your traumatic past. You take it with you, all that. So this just kind of reminds me of that right away of like, right, classic ghost stories was often, a metaphor for child abuse. So during the scene in the beginning, though, with the two little kids, that's the first glimpse we get of Marisol Chavez, who's this beautiful, creepy woman with glasses for eyes. So Tim, all grown up, is discharged from the hospital where his sister Kaylee has informed him, picks him up and says, hey, remember that creepy mirror we had as children? Well, I've procured it. And then
we face your demons.
Yes. So welcome out of the hospital. Time to mess you up some more. What's that?
Poor guy.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know.
Straight out of the hospital.
Really the victim.
You know what caused your trauma? We're going to go right back into it. Didn't miss a beat. I don't care. You just got out.
Right. Exactly.
Because there's no logic in horror movies, like ever.
Yes, exactly. And when we get a glimpse of Kaylee as an adult, she works for an auction firm. That her fiance, I believe his character's name is Michael Dumont, that's played by James Lafferty. And they watch as the antique creepy mirror is auctioned off. The mirror is called the Lasser glass mirror and is near mint condition except for a small crack in the corner.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yes. So then she tells her brother, hey, I got the mirror and we're going to kill this thing. Right. So then we jump 11 years into the past, and that's where we first see the Russell family as normal as it'll ever be. And we definitely get hints that before they got this mirror or moved into the house, but we know it's a mirror. Before they got the mirror, they seemed like a great family. Dog, successful parents, two kids. And we know that he was a good father, Alan was, because he has nicknames for his children. Timbo and what was the daughter's Kaylee? I think he called her Fatty. I don't know.
I called her Princess. I thought
that was it. Yes, much nicer. So
Champion Princess is Timbo. I think those were the three nicknames.
Yes, exactly. And we know if you have nicknames for your children, you are not abusive.
No, never.
Yes. So that's how we know. Yeah, and there's like nice back and forth between his wife, Marie, and Alan, and it looks like they're just a normal family, so to speak. Yes. So they move into their new house, and the husband has already made a bad decision in purchasing this Lasser glass mirror. And it's late night, and that's where we get another glimpse of Marisol. So Alan, we get the impression he works a lot. So he's up at night for a midnight snack like so many of us do, and he's passing by the office with the mirror, and we get a glimpse of Marisol with her creepy glass eyes. He turns on the light and just sees a mirror there, and that's it.
Yep.
So back in 2013 now, Kaylee wakes up, and she confronts the mirror, but I'm confused because how is the mirror already in her house? And then as she's looking at the mirror, and this is grown-up Kaylee in 2013, her dad shows up behind her and starts choking her. And then her fiance wakes her up and says, hey, you're just having a midnight terror. So there we go. Now it's time for Kaylee to meet the mirror for the first time. This was such a creepy scene, and it's like nothing compared to what we'll get. So she goes to this storage unit for this auction house. I mean, it's just a ton of stuff.
A bunch of antique stuff.
Yes, exactly.
On shelves.
Yes, and she sees the mirror and she talks to it. Like says, nice to see you, old friend, or something to that. And then she looks at the crack or she says, hello again. You must be hungry. And then she sees the crack in the corner and says, I hope it still hurts. So she's talking to this inanimate object like it's very much alive.
Yeah. Maybe it's a hint.
Yes. All right. So then, do you remember what happens when she looks in the reflection of the mirror?
She sees three, like, I guess covered, like, bodies, because it's hard to tell what's underneath it, but you can definitely tell it's humanoid.
Yeah, and almost like before
Movies.
it's revealed what it is, I thought it was like mannequins or something.
Yeah, this is an antique shop. It could be sculptures, mannequins, or something like that. And then it was covered in shawls, and she sees one of the heads move.
Yes, exactly.
Very creepy, classic.
Very creepy and classic. And when she turns around, the three figures are in a different position.
Mm-hmm.
And she approaches it, and she takes off one sheet, and it's a statue, like a bust of a statue, and then
like Aristotle or something.
Exactly. And she uncovers the second one, and it's another one, and she's about to uncover the third, and then a worker appears behind her and scares the bejesus out of her. And he's like, sign here. And then she goes to look at the third, and the third's gone. It was never there.
Dun, dun, dun.
She then looks at the mirror and says, I'll see you at home. So that whole thing's actually really well shot, really creepy. And for you seeing this for the first time, what did that do to you now that you've seen Freaky Marisol twice and now her interacting with this mirror?
I look towards Poltergeist, and I looked at this. I'm like, yep, this is a completely different pacing of this movie. This is like not even like 20 minutes in. They've already brought out the high suspense, high intensity.
Yes.
And I already know that I'm in for a trip. I start to smile a little bit because I realize like how like that shot was just amazing. The panning, the feeling like you felt like you were with her.
Oh yeah. And even, I mean, I've seen this movie a bunch, and even revisiting it before we did the show, it creeped me out. And I don't believe in things that go bump in the night.
No, me neither.
Right. But Flanagan does a good job of me thinking I do believe that during this movie.
Yeah.
I'm freaked out. Absolutely. So, of course, naturally, Kaylee gets a hold of Tim and says, hey, meet me at the house. So that's good. What do you do to your brother who just gets out of a mental institution?
Try to put him back.
You got to take him to the house where it all began. But, you know, she's trying to do the right thing here. And we get a flashback again to 2011. And it's with Kaylee's mom, Marie. And still in that epoch of where they just moved into the house. But all of her indoor plants are now dead. Mm-hmm. And outside, young Kaylee and Tim are playing with like laser tag like guns. And Kaylee looks into the window of her dad's office, and it's a little dirty, but you can see a beautiful woman kind of groping her dad from behind. Yep. And she's not sure what she's looking at here, and she just continues going on and playing. Later on that evening, Kaylee asked her dad at the dinner table about the woman, and her dad dismisses it and says, I really don't know what you're talking about. And the wife doesn't look concerned at the time because, you know, everyone's home.
Yeah.
And who, you know, it's not that big of a house to have your mistress hanging out.
That'd be pretty. I'd give props to Marisol if she was just a random person just coming in. Like, as when his wife is home, already starts having an affair. Like, takes some guts and some skill.
Yeah, or just complete insanity.
Yeah, too. But we already get a hint of that.
Yes, exactly. So back to 2013, and Tim and Kaylee are back at the house, and Kaylee tells him to have a look around. You haven't been here since, you know, all the horrors of your childhood trauma. So go look around, and then we get some exposition of what's been happening since whatever incident happened when they were children in that house. And she says that this house has been on the market ever since I was in foster care, and I got out at 18, and I was the only teenager who owned a house, and we couldn't sell it. So they said that, you know, at this point, we see that Kaylee has a plan, though. And she has all of these things set up. She has cameras set up, all these timers, and all of this stuff. And Tim, we also get the sense that Tim does not have the same memory of their childhood as Kaylee has. Mm-mm. So Tim is convinced that all of the supernatural stuff they saw as children was just a product of their imaginations to cope with trauma, which is not uncommon. And so he's kind of the logic in this whole thing. Where
leave it to the guy who leaves a mental institution to be the logic. That's what I kind of wanted to point at. I forget her name. The lead girl. I wanted to point at her and laugh. Just like,
Kaylee?
Kaylee. If he's the voice of reason, what are you doing?
Right. Because in the real world, what he's saying is accurate. Yes. That should be the approach you're taking. But in the horror world, we know that there's more than meets the eye. So Tim remembers having dinner, the family and all that, and we go to where they're all in the office, their dad's former office, and that's where she has all the video cameras. She also has plants set up, and she's also brought a dog with her that she just calls Dog. And when we first find this out, she's like, well, I haven't named him. And then we find out why she hasn't named that dog. So the dog is just food for the mirror, as are the plants. Because apparently she tells us that the Lasser glass always goes after the low-hanging fruit. It'll take life force from plants and animals first and then go after humans. Mm-hmm. So she has plants set up in this office. She brought her own lights, knowing that the mirror likes to get rid of lights. Like, she's here for a fight. And part of her contraptions is this axe attached to the ceiling with the string that goes down to an egg timer, and every 30 minutes that axe will swing and destroy the mirror unless she resets the timer. So she says we don't have to wait for the mirror to do anything, because the mirror knows it's on borrowed time, because if we don't do this, if I don't reset this egg timer every 30 minutes or 60 minutes, the mirror will be destroyed, which, of course, why not just break it right then? But it's not. She created this contraption to destroy it, because anytime humans try to destroy it, they can't. Mm-hmm. So this is when we start learning a little bit more about the Lasser glass. And this whole part was very creepy to me. We know that this object is responsible for at least 45 deaths in the 4 centuries, but she just goes through a few of them, which I will do now. So, victims. It started in 1754. They don't know when the Lasser glass mirror was made, but the first known owner in recorded history was in 1754 by Philip and Virginia Lasser. And Philip Lasser hung it above his fireplace in London at his London estate, where he resided with his wife Virginia. He is later found burnt to death at the base of the fireplace and burnt to where he was unrecognizable. He later was seen in the mirror by servants, and a church investigation took place. And then you fast forward over a century later, in 1864, the next known owner was a gentleman named Robert Clancy and he was a Southern Railroad tycoon. And he was known as a very large man. He was over 300 pounds. Yep. He hung the mirror in his Atlanta, Georgia ballroom, and she shows a picture of him, and just weeks later, he looks to be, 150 pounds.
Yeah, he lost a lot of weight.
Yep, and he died a few weeks later after that, and I believe they said his death was unknown. So, now we get the turn of the 20th century. In 1904, the next owner was Mary O'Connor, a New England woman who hung the mirror in her private bathroom, where she was found dead 2 weeks later in her bathtub, which was full of water, and she died by dehydration. So we have heavyset man who died by seemingly starving himself, and in a matter of weeks, which would just not go that way. And Mary O'Connor was a woman who hung it in her bathroom, and she was found dead by dehydration, even though she was in a bathtub. So very creepy here. 1943, Alice Carden from Lake Geneva. She hung the mirror in her children's nursery of their farmhouse, and then she would go on to drown her 2 children, thinking she was putting them to bed. And she also smashed all her bones with a hammer in the children's nursery, and all of her body, except, go on.
Her right arm, because she needed it.
Yes.
To break herself.
Exactly. And in 1955, Tobin Cap was the next owner, and he starved to death in his bedroom where he hung the mirror, and his pet Dalmatian is never located, and the house plants are also dead. In San Diego, California, in 1965, Maria Wicker, she put the mirror in the lobby of the Hill Trust Bank where she worked, and Maria locked the manager in the vault and chewed through a live power line, and they show a picture of her, and I assume that is what someone would look like if they chewed through a live power line. Oh, so she's going through all of these. It's fairly quick. Like, I had to pause and stuff to make notes. Like, she's just rattling these off. It's a very intense scene. She gets to Oliver Jeffries in 1971, who was a teacher at Dunham Academy in New York City. His class plants died, and he tried to break the mirror with a fire poker, which hung in the lecture hall. And right before he was going to smash it, he stopped and stared at it before he walked into traffic and was hit by a car. And then we get the last known victim, Marisol Chavez, in 1975. And we saw a picture of her earlier in the movie. Her fiance approaches her and says, "Stop printing out creepy crap because you're scaring the shit out of your coworkers." And it was this photo. It was a photo of Marisol Chavez, who died from a hemorrhage from a miscarriage.
Oh, miscarriage. Right.
Yeah. And she had also pulled out all her teeth with a pair of pliers and put them neatly in a plastic bag. Hey, everyone. We thank you for listening to Horror Movies Hub Presents, and we hope you are enjoying the show. I just wanted to take a quick moment to tell you about shophmh.com, the official store for Horror Movies Hub. And we have a great sale happening there. All our shirts are soft, semi-fitted, so they look great on every body type. Trust me, they look great on me, they will look great on you. And they feature original in-house designs, and many of them are on sale at a great value. Beyond our horror and Halloween shirt collection, we are also the official shop of Smart Wrestling Fan, and we have original, one-of-a-kind, customizable breast cancer shirts as well. As many of you know, my wife Lorraine is currently a breast cancer warrior, and Lorraine herself assisted me in creating many of these designs. Support a small business and a good cause by ordering yours today at shophmh.com. Again, that's shophmh.com for original horror shirts and beyond. And now, back to the show. So then that brings us, and Kaylee brings this up. She goes 2002, where she's about to talk about her own family, and this is where her brother stops her and says, what went down as far as the law's eyes are concerned is her dad snapped, and he ended up killing his father. Of course, he said dad was crazy. She slaps her brother and says, "Say what you want about me, but don't talk about him that way." And this wasn't our fault at all. And it wasn't dad's fault. It's this mirror's fault. Gosh darn it. This gosh darn mirror. So now we know why they're here. And we know the history of the mirrors. Now we know what they're up against.
A mirror.
So what are your thoughts thus far? What was this whole scene for you?
Well, scene was really cool because it seemed like it made it really seem like there was no way that they were going to get beaten, that they were going to kick this mirror's ass. Because she had all this elaborate pet stuff. She was like, every 30 minutes, we're going to drink a bottle of water. Every hour, we're going to eat, blah, 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 blah. Every single little alarm goes off. That means the temperature is going around, yada, yada, yada. She's done all these fantastic measures, which you think is going to be a great avail. Not going into later. And then the guy, of course, Tim, he's like, you have a problem. You have this big problem with just like, you're holding on to this trauma and you're finding excuse. We were like 11. You're making up excuses for blah, 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 blah.
Right. And he talks about how like it's not uncommon for children who went through trauma for their brain to invent things to protect them. And that is true.
And I was on his side for like most of this movie until I saw her break it down. Because she was, I don't think she was convincing her. She was convincing everybody. Everybody who's watching it, you're like, well, coincidence, correlation, it definitely looks like correlation because this is all very similar yet strange yet.
Right. And he even brings up like, hey, in 2002, mom and dad bought a couch and then our aunt died and something else happened. Are we blaming the couch? And it's like, yeah, this is all logical outside of a horror movie. So, and that's when, like, during this conversation is when she shows him the kill switch of the axe. Cause, you know, he's like, let's just break the mirror. And he goes to break it and can't. And that's when she goes into this whole, like, line of stories.
She picks up the stool and then he puts down the stool.
Yes.
And
exactly.
you're kind of like, is he trying to break it? Oh.
Right. And she even says, a mirror just persuaded you not to. And he says, well, that's because I can't rid you of your past demons. Only you can do that. Something to that effect. So we then get another flashback to 2002. And what's interesting and what I really liked about this movie is often with movies, like, for instance, hopefully a film we discuss at some point, An Exorcism of Emily Rose. It takes place in the present, and it's like all non-horror stuff in the present. All the horror stuff comes when they do the flashback scenes, and lots of horror stories do that. So it gives the audience a feeling, like a feeling of being safe. Like, I know during this era they show me it won't be too horrifying. I can relax, and it's only during this era. Where in this movie, no matter where he jumps to, it's frightening.
Yeah.
You know, in fact, it's kind of scarier when he flashes back, and it's just as intense when they come back to the present day of 2013.
This movie was a trip.
It really was. So we jump back to the past, and Alan is typing away at his computer office, and he has a bandage on his finger, and he tries to take the bandage off, and it's stuck. So he, you know, grabs a stapler remover, little clippy thing, and pulls onto it and pulls it off. And it's just then he realizes there was never a Band-Aid on his finger, and he just ripped his nail off. So that makes me never want to take a pair of stapler removers and rip my nail.
It's a good life lesson. That's what this whole movie was about. It's that you never take your fingernail off with a stapler remover.
Exactly. And he then approaches the mirror, which is in his office, and looks into it. And when he turns around behind him, all of these books are like opened up to the middle and lying down on the floor face down, kind of layered on top of each other, very organized. He calls in the children and say, I told you not to play in my office. He said, we don't even like it in this creepy ass room. And he says, well, someone did this, so you're not allowed it. Yes. The children always know.
They do. They're always the victim because they always know.
And so we flash forward back to the present. And Kaylee is telling Tim more things, like how the mirror feeds off the low-hanging fruit, like the dog, and house plants. And she also says it has the power of getting rid of light. So I brought all of my own lights and lots of extra light bulbs. And we also know that it can cause extreme changes in temperature, so I have thermometers. And Michael has Michael, her fiance, has agreed to call Kaylee every hour, and to make sure that she's okay. And if she doesn't answer the phone, he is to call the police. And so he does this, and during this time, unbeknownst to her brother. And, you know, basically tells her fiance that he's doing it because she doesn't know if she's safe with her brother, Tim. But that's just an excuse because she really just wants people checking in on them. So we also learned during this time, she also starts recording on the video and introducing themselves. And she wants to document all of this and capture it on video camera. And so this is, you know, basically her belief that the mirror is evil, and this is her way to prove everyone wrong because they think her brother's a killer, her dad's a killer, and let's face it, she's messed up too. So we go back to 2002, and the Russell family dog, Mason, is lying on the ground very ill. And we also get a cut scene that's going to be important later, or some information where Alan and Marie are discussing gun safety for a gun he bought. And Marie is very upset, and she locks it up. And as he's leaving the room, Alan calls her a grotesque cow. And she says, what'd you just call me, MFer? And he said, I said nothing. And then she looks at herself in the mirror, and we get the feeling this the first time she's truly looked into the mirror, and we see that she is affected by the way she appears, plus those words of his of grotesque cow. She kind of touches her body, and she's a beautiful woman, but you can tell that she's looking at herself differently.
Yeah.
So later on, Marie is woken up by the sound of their dog barking outside Alan's office door. She goes to let him in, and he bites her and runs off. And she pulls on the door again and yells for Alan. He's workaholic dude. So many of these dads are in these ghost stories. Just take a look at The Shining. And Marie hears him talking to someone, though. And she's like, who are you talking to? And he's like, I wasn't talking at all. So Marie is upset, and she says there's something wrong with the dog, and they begin arguing. So the next day, Alan goes to leave to golf with a client, and he tells the children again to stay out of the office. During this time, Marie becomes more annoyed with Mason, who is once again barking outside of Alan's office because the dog knows something's up with that mirror. Animals and children
Dogs always know.
Yes.
Every single, almost always, the animals always know.
Yes. And once again, I have a movie to show me that there's probably something messed up with me, because I'm okay with all these humans getting messed with, but leave the dogs alone.
Yes. What the heck?
Always bothers me when pets. Yeah. Flanagan knows what he's doing. So she ends up locking the dog, bites her. She ends up locking the dog in the office. Alan comes back from golfing, says the dog is grounded in the office, and Alan unlocks the door, but Mason has disappeared. So then we go back to the present, 2013, and Tim tells Kaylee she was remembering the events wrong, that Mason got sick and had to be taken to the vet. And Kaylee insists they sat outside the door and that Tim has been brainwashed by the hospital he just got out of. We go back to the past, and Marie and Alan are fighting again, and Alan tells Marie that she is losing her mind. And they are loud enough that the kids wake up, and Marie is tucking Kaylee into bed, and Kaylee asks Marie if they're fighting because of the woman in the office.
Now the divorce is your fault. This is why you don't say those things.
Yes. The divorce is always the children's fault.
Oh, of course.
Always.
So
in the present, Tim tells Kaylee that their father was having an affair, and her memories regarding the mirror were fabricated, that it was a bad marriage and that was it. Kaylee says, you fool. While you were busy trying to get your brain washed, I went through all of the estate stuff, and there is no proof anywhere that he ever had an affair.
I thought you were going to stop at you fool.
You fool. And that's the end of the movie. So they continue arguing. Meanwhile, the Boston Terrier, just named Dog, that at this point is in a cage in front of the mirror, and we're in present time, and they're arguing. The dog is barking, and he's like, look, the only thing endangering this dog is you, and he lets the dog free. And he then begs Kaylee to leave the house with him, and saying that they can go somewhere and deal with this together. And for a moment, you see that Kaylee believes Tim, like maybe this is all in my head. So she agrees to disarm the trap. What's that?
Until.
Yes. Well, they disarm the trap. They take the cameras down, and we see the look on Kaylee's face of, holy crap, for lack of a better term, crazy this whole time. Was this fabricated by my mind to protect me of the trauma and horror of, dad killing mom, and then my brother killing dad, and all these other things? So right when we think that she's coming to reality, in quotes, she looks into a room, and we see an expression on her face of she's just been vindicated. And then her brother looks in the room, and what they look at are dead plants, and the cameras have been turned away from the mirror to face each other. So she's like, it's happening, and they replay the tape and see that when they were arguing during this time, they were subconsciously moving the video cameras. And Kaylee said, I don't remember doing that, do you? And Tim just looks shocked. So Tim goes to call his doctor. Kaylee stops him and says to make any calls outside. because the mirror can mimic voices on the phone as long as they're within its range. And in fact, at one point when her fiance calls to check in on him, she says, yeah, we're fine, hangs up and goes 50-50 chance it wasn't even him.
Another, what I love about that little scene where she walks in to the two cameras facing each other.
Right.
She looks at her brother and goes, ha!
Yes,
that's exactly what everybody would do in that situation.
Yes.
I told you so.
And it was great. That ha, you're right. Good point in bringing it up. That ha like said so much with just that one brief word. Mm-hmm. And we also learned that the radius of the mirror's influence in the scene is about 30 feet, which isn't that consistent throughout the movie, but we'll go through it.
Yeah.
So Tim goes outside to make a phone call, and the phone doesn't work. And it's at that time that Tim is realizing that on a supernatural level, all is not well. So, let's see. Okay, we flash back to the past, and young Kaylee walks into her dad's office to find her mother there with a vacuum. And she's like just swaying in front of the mirror, but otherwise not really moving. And it's very creepy.
Very. Because she's just standing there in the machine. Like the vacuum seemingly just got louder and louder.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And later, Marie, Tim, and Kaylee are at the dinner table without their dad, without Alan. And Marie is drinking an entire bottle of wine with herself and has made toast for dinner. She looks very sick, and she asks the kids to tell her more about the woman in her husband's office. And Kaylee lies and says she never saw a woman, but Tim says he has seen the woman, and the woman was on the stairs, and I didn't say anything to her because that's creepy, and I was scared. But he says that he thinks she lives in the office and occasionally comes out. And Marie says, go upstairs and play. And the children all through this are told to go in the other room and play. And it's just so frightening. Like,
oh, goodness. I can't believe the one that was in the mental institution is the sanest person in this movie.
Oh, yes. Yes, yes. So, well, for now. So Marie enters the office and sits at Alan's desk. And there's like paper, and it looks kind of normal. Like on the first page, it's like a work printout sheet, but on the bottom is just this name where he scribbled Marisol. And then she starts looking through the paper, and in the middle of the pile is a paper with her name scribbled in all sorts of ways. Marisol, Marisol, Marisol. And she's upset, obviously. And what's that?
Because it seems like an affair.
Yes, exactly. She shoves the items off Alan's desk because now she knows that this woman Marisol's been in, to sleep with her husband, and she ain't wrong. So while cleaning up the mess she made, she starts yelling and is upset, and she's holding a pen, and she throws it at the mirror, but it misses and hits the wall because it always protects itself. The Lasser glass will always protect itself. But then the lights suddenly dim, and Marie sees herself in the mirror, smiling in a very unnerving way. And her reflection looks down and undoes the buttons on her dress, revealing a C-section scar that has reopened. Ugh. And Marie screams, and Tim and Kaylee come running downstairs. And at this time, the mother tries to strangle Tim.
Yep.
And, I mean, all very disturbing stuff here. Kaylee pulls them free, and they run away. Marie's chasing them. They lock themselves in the bedroom. Marie slams on the door. And Alan comes home to this. He grabs her and kind of chokes her out until she passes out. And tells the kids to play video games.
So, don't play.
Don't play. And
it's like
so
just keep swimming, but like in this movie, it's just go and play.
Yes, exactly. And the dad is actually acting normal here. Like he gets the woman under control, gently makes her pass out, goes to call 911, but hears whispering voices from the mirror or from the phone, hard to tell. But either way, hangs up his phone and then drags. And then this is where you know he shifts, because this whole time that he's wrestling with his wife and trying to calm her down.
Careful.
He's being careful, like you see, like it's the real him. It's like that break from the home to go golf was enough to clear his mind. But now he's back to where this mirror has dominance. So After the attempted 911 call, he then pushes Marie off of him unceremoniously and drags her away like she's a victim. Mm-hmm. And Kaylee sees this because she's opened the door because she's not playing. And the dad says, stay in your room, go to bed. And he is there in the hall with chains in his hand. So this looks like some sort of flashback because present time, Kaylee is comforting Tim. And they return to the office room with the mirror where Kaylee is turning the cameras back on. And Tim sees Kaylee approaching the screen on the computer. So the lights dim and we see brief flashbacks of him and Kaylee back in the past. So this is all growing very much more intense.
Oh, yeah. It doesn't stop. It keeps building.
Yes.
Not till the very end of the movie. Like, this was such a long ride.
It is. What's funny, this movie's 105 minutes, so in reality, probably 90 minutes without credits. And I love this movie, so this isn't a knock. It feels longer because it's so heavy and intense throughout.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not like a boring kind of drag. It's just like, oh my gosh, my heart.
So that was all 90 minutes. Like, good Lord, that's just it's amazing.
Amazingly, they kept switching the times from each side, so it was a little progression on both sides of the story.
Yeah, and they would kind of parallel or mimic each other.
Mm-hmm. And that kind of made it feel longer as well.
Yes, and all this time, like when we flash back to the present time where they're in the house in 2013, she has all these alarms set to remind her, like, hey, it's time to hydrate, drink water. An alarm goes off, time to eat lunch. She wants to make sure they don't die any other way the past victims have died.
Mm-hmm. And they don't.
Starvation or no, they don't. Or dehydration. So, and she wants to make sure they're as healthy as possible during this main event fight. So, oh
my goodness, this movie.
It's exhausting. So we go back to a flashback, and Tim or Kaylee are in the father's office where he tells them that their mother is very sick and will need to rest for a while, but they are not to bother her. And Kaylee asks what's wrong. Alan doesn't answer. They said, hey, you know what? You can hang out in this office and play video games. And Kaylee's like, you told us never to play here. But so something's wrong. And the dad's very creepy during the scene, like saying normal things to children with very abnormal expressions. So
yeah.
That paradox.
It's like a little need to care.
Yes, exactly. And during this interaction between you can play video games, thought we couldn't, a light burns out. Hey everyone, it's Carter again. I just want to take another quick moment to thank you for listening to our show and encourage you to visit horrormovieshub.com for unique reviews, movie trailers, and celeb interviews centered on our favorite genre, horror. All our content, including this podcast, is free, and you can show your support just by visiting our site, horrormovieshub.com. You can also support us by following us on social media. We absolutely love interacting with other horror fans. Just visit horrormovieshub.com, and at the bottom of the page you will see our social info. Like us, follow us, and subscribe to our YouTube channel where we have lots of original shows on the way, and currently you can enjoy our first ever YouTube show, Rachel Rocks Horror, featuring former adult movie superstar Rachel Rocks and myself. And remember to subscribe and hit the bell. Just visit horrormovieshub.com and follow us on our social media located at the bottom of the page. That's horrormovieshub.com. And now, back to the show. So back to the present, an alarm goes off to remind Kaylee and Tim to eat. And Kaylee hands Tim an apple, and she starts eating herself. And there's a brief flashback with Kaylee yelling at Tim, who was in a trance as a kid, and Alan going up the stairs with a plate of food, and then like another light goes out, and then Kaylee replaces the light, and then it goes out again. So then we go back to the present, and something similar is happening with that light. So she's replacing lights, and she's eating an apple, and she takes the apple out and sets it next to an old light bulb. But when she picks up the apple again, she takes a bite out of the light bulb. So now I know never to use stapler removers on my fingernails and never chew a light bulb.
My exact saying was like, no, that's not edible, you fool.
And it doesn't even feel like an apple.
It's like Captain Crunch. It's just hurting the top of your mouth.
You got to let it soak. You got to let it soak.
Gotta let it soak.
So she pulls a bloody piece of glass from her mouth in horror, and Tim appears. But when Tim appears, she finds that it was an actual apple she was eating, and that it was a hallucination with the glass. And she looks at Tim for one of the few comic relief parts. The ha moment was one of them when she says ha when the plants are dead and the cameras have moved. And this is another one because she realizes that was a hallucination. She looks up to her brother and says, maybe we should stay together. So in the past, yes, we're back in 2002, and it shows Tim watching cartoons, and the TV turns static. Did you notice anything in the TV?
There was like a face. Was that Marisol? I couldn't really tell.
It was actually his sister grown up, and it was 3 different photos of her, and in the last one, she was screaming.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes.
I just thought it was just, the classic, just you see kind of a face,
Yes.
I didn't realize it had that much meaning behind it.
Yeah, no, it's really creepy. And so it shows young Kaylee storming into her dad's office and saying, we need food. And she tells him that the TV is out and they also need to call a doctor for their mom. So it's interesting what's a priority for young Kaylee. I need food, fix the TV. Oh, yeah. Doesn't mom need to see a doctor or something? So Alan during this time is just staring into the mirror, distracted, and he just says it's on the list, and Kaylee gets frustrated and leaves. And so they go upstairs, and Kaylee decides to tell her mother that they are out of food. She opens the door, and her mom is filthy. The room is filthy. There's broken glass on the floor. And when Kaylee approaches the glass, Marie suddenly lunges at her in one of the few jump scare moments of the movie.
Oh, I hate jump scares. They're so cheap.
Well, they're only cheap if it's done incorrectly. Like if it's done correctly, they're very effective. Like this scared me. Did it not make you jump?
Oh, it did. That's why I think they're cheap.
So she's chained to the wall with her neck and is missing most of her teeth. Of course, Kaylee runs out of the room back in the office and demands they call a doctor. And Alan becomes angry and says Kaylee's problem is that she does not listen. He says her and her brother are not to set foot outside the house. So Kaylee later calls a doctor. When she gets off the phone, Tim asks what he said. She said he told her to have their father call and had some voice as the last doctor and had the same voice as the last doctor they called. So we know this is the mirror messing with them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we cut to Kaylee walking up the lawn and knocking on their front door with one of their neighbors. And Alan apologizes and tells their neighbor Kaylee is upset about Marie's illness and she's just acting out. And we also see Alan has chewed his nails almost completely off. He looks up at Kaylee and goes into his office. Present day, Kaylee leans against the mirror with her eyes closed, and she sees that the kill switch is about to go off and runs and resets it. So probably not a good place to be hanging out since there's a booby trap designed to destroy something there. And so Tim is upstairs, and this is cool because now he's having hallucinations or flashbacks or whatever. But when he's upstairs, he finds himself younger from 2002 on the bed. And the cool thing about this is his younger self looks up and acknowledges him.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of this?
That was really cool to see. Like, because you see this as you get later in the movie. And of course, there was kind of already a hint of that where he saw his sister in the TV,
right,
grown up.
Mm-hmm.
They probably did see themselves like in their past, early on, like in their past. And it kind of just shows you how powerful the force they're messing with.
Yes.
Like this thing has killed 45 or maybe 47. I don't know if they counted their parents.
They should.
I was more upset when they were kids, though. I want to go back to the scene where it says not to leave the house. I'm like, that's exactly what you should have done. Your father is not okay. He's not providing for you. You can at least get care from CPS.
Right. Sure.
Just leave.
Just leave. Just run away.
Horror movie victims do everything but leave.
Yeah, well, at least they're kids. I mean, you never want to leave your parents as children.
I get that.
They are your safe place.
They're old enough to know that this is not okay. Run.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. But, I mean, you'll need to get over that if we're going to watch horror movies.
Oh, I know.
They're all making wrong decisions, especially when we cover ones from my favorite era, the 80s. They all make the wrong decisions.
It's like that Geico commercial.
Yes, exactly.
If you're a horror movie victim, you make wrong decisions.
Why don't we hide in the shed with all the chainsaws?
Yeah, why don't we hide behind? It's like, why don't we get in the running car? Are you crazy? Let's go hide behind this wall of chainsaws.
The baddie's just shaking his head. That's awesome.
That's exactly what I felt.
This whole thing of going back to like looking at their younger self, I won't say anything to spoil future things we may watch, but this is a theme that Mike Flanagan likes a lot, of the past and the future catching up with each other kind of thing. And it also shows, as you pointed out, like the mirror, it kind of transcends time. So
it does not care.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I mean, Tim is upstairs looking at his younger self, who acknowledges him, and then the lights go out and older Tim disappears. And young Tim,
beautiful transition. One of the many great transitions in this movie.
Yes. And yeah, this whole sequence is beautiful because now we think we're back in the past. And young Tim is walking down the hall and yells for Kaylee, but we see older Kaylee walking down stairs with the lamp. And the power has gone out there as well. So it looks like these two time frames are kind of meeting, but it's neat the way they do it. It's just showing what happened in the past with the present. It is. It's a beautiful sequence that I can definitely see why this movie put Flanagan on the map. So the power has gone out for older Kaylee, and she turns on the emergency lamps to the house, and she smashes a pot in anger. And she goes upstairs, and young Tim walks downstairs past her. So there we get the timelines interacting again. So we're turning on the lights. We see broken ceramic and chains. And chains like what her mom was tied to 11 years before.
And the plate, of course.
And the plate, yes. And she tells herself it isn't real and leaves the room. And at this time, young Tim is opening the office door and asks his dad to fix the lights, and he sees this gruesome woman, Marisol, presumably hunched behind Alan, and she comes to the door. Young Tim screams and goes upstairs where he locks the door and hides, while older Tim is on the other side of the room watching. So all of that's a little confusing, but also visually stunning.
It was so, like I said, it's the way I would describe like this movie is that it's a trip, and the reason I say that is because it's like it moves you around everywhere, and you feel like you're being shoved around, pushed around.
Yes,
but like it's definitely not unpleasant. You watch this and you're like awestruck about how it ties so beautifully together with the two timelines.
Absolutely, and one of the I always, I'm not the only one, but horror movies are described as like a roller coaster ride. Out of the movie genres. And this is one hell of a roller coaster ride that Flanagan takes us on. Because, so we go to older Kaylee, adult Kaylee, in 2013. And she's back downstairs, and there's broken plates all over the floor. But she picks up a piece, and she pulls out herself. She picks up a shard of the plate, and I thought this was brilliant. She pulls out her cell phone and uses the camera to scan the floor, and the shards do not show up on the camera. So she knows that that's an illusion. And she turns and sees her mother standing behind her, who's just frightening. And she instinctively screams and stabs her mother in the neck with a broken plate that she was holding. And this is when it's revealed that she thinks she's stabbing her mother, but now we see her fiance stabbed in the neck. And he drops to the ground bleeding. But at this point, we don't know if it's actually him or another illusion like eating the light bulb, right? So Tim comes downstairs, and Kaylee is trying not to freak out, knowing the mirror can create delusions or illusions. And she asks Tim if he's real or not. And Tim crouches by the now dead body, and Kaylee's phone rings. She answers it, and it's her fiance on the other end. And
this was such a mean move by the mirror.
It was, yes. You didn't have to do the phone call after.
Yeah, that was so rude.
But watching this the first time, I remember thinking, like, okay, so at this point, did you think she actually stabbed the real fiance, or did you think the mirror was just screwing her?
I was probably my own little, like, I was probably the only person to think that in the first. I completely thought that was real. Like,
okay, so you knew right away.
Because, well, I had a feeling that, I don't know why, I just knew that he wouldn't listen by calling the police. Yes. So he showed up instead.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. There you go. So yeah, that makes sense. So Kaylee uses a camera to find out if it's really him or not, knowing. So she says this can't be real. The plates weren't real. I didn't stab. If I wasn't holding a real plate, then that means he can't be real. So she opens up the camera phone to see if her dead fiance is an illusion or not. And unfortunately, she does see him through the camera phone.
And then it shows that it wasn't the plate. It was actually the broken pot that I think Tim smashed before.
Yes.
And that's what made me fall in love with this movie.
Awesome. So this was the scene where you fully bought in?
Yeah, because now it shows that the movie that little thing in the mirror does not care. You will never know when you're okay, what is real, nothing is real. You'll never know. Ever.
Right. Yep.
You're just going to have to try to survive.
Exactly. And it's during this whole sequence that you realize the true power of the mirror, the messed up phone call from her dead fiance. Like you said, like, the plates weren't real, but that potted plant was, and that's what she stabbed him in the neck with. So we now see what a formidable force this mirror is. And keep in mind, once again, crazy white people brought this on themselves. She didn't have to go searching for this mirror.
No.
She had left well enough alone. Her brother gets out, whatever. But
you want everything but leave.
Yes. So they brought this on themselves. But I get it. She wanted answers for her messed up life. So here's her answers. So she's
your fiance.
Yeah, and she great job in acting here, because I believe in Kaylee's. Like a horror movie is only as good as its victims and the villain, and I believe in Kaylee and the sadness, because she sobs like, my God, what have I done? So Tim takes Kaylee outside and calls 911. Kaylee tries to run back in, and Tim stops her, telling her they just have to wait for the kill switch to go off, and they can stay outside and watch the mirror die, and the police are on the way. So during this time, though, and they're outside, all the lights inside the house come back on, and they see themselves in the room with the mirror standing in front of it. And Tim says it's a trick to get them back inside. And Kaylee says it may be a trick to keep them standing there. And she tells Tim to call for... Yeah, I thought that was really done. He's like, this is just a trick to get us back inside. She's like, or it's a trick to keep us standing here. And it's like, and that's where you just don't know what you would do or what to do,
That's like I said, that little potted plant thing, this kicked the movie into an entirely different level.
Yeah.
Before there was like minor stuff, like, because like, in Poltergeist, like the comparison is when the meat was kind of like doing its own thing, the face was falling off, the illusions and stuff, but then it goes back to normal. That's all that the movie has been so far, is that it just goes back to normal. Now it doesn't care. Now it's killing people. Now it's trying to mess with you and hurt you in any way possible.
Yes, in the present timeline of 2013.
Mm-hmm. You're not safe anymore.
Real horror was in 2002. We saw some scary stuff in 2013, but nothing life-threatening.
There were no illusions about that guy's death.
Right. That was all very real. So she tells her brother to call for help again, and he calls 911, but this time he gets a response that they're going to have to wait for his father.
Oh my God!
Kaylee breaks the phone.
Good touch.
Yes.
Oh, just got that phone.
Right? Yeah. So Kaylee breaks the phone. Yeah, he's like, I just got that phone, and asked him what they should do. Then we go back to the past, where Alan is in his office, leaning on the mirror. He then sits at his desk, pulls out a gun, and begins loading it. Young Tim is outside watching his father do this, and runs upstairs and tells Kaylee that he's loading the gun, and Kaylee says, we're going to have to kill that mirror. So present time, and this is where we get a bunch of flashbacks to flash presents and all the other stuff, like back and forth.
It's so hard to know where you're at.
And it's like this climax of both stories meeting. And that's where it's like
so,
you get no break.
so
it's like
good.
exhausting in a good way, but it's like I could never watch this twice in a row.
What's funny is that when I was watching this movie, my dad was at home. For all the people who are listening, I was about right here when he was loading the gun, and then I think it killed the. Actually, I think it was right after they killed the fiance, and it started to go off. And my dad comes in and asks me if he wants to do something together, and I almost leaped out of my chair because I was wrapped in, so tense. I was just like, "You go away."
No, Dad, do you want to do something together? How are you feeling right now?
And I was scared out of my mind. I was like, "Oh my goodness!" He just brought me out of reality real quick.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, I jumped so far out of my chair.
I know what you mean.
You get so immersed, and then all of a sudden it just takes you right back out.
I was watching
looking around for a mirror in my room, ready to punch it.
Ready to burn it. I was revisiting this movie very recently, and just because I like, even if I've seen a movie 24 times, I want to watch it fresh before we talk, obviously, and just get into the spirit of it. So my wife, Lorraine, largely doesn't like horror. She's very selective on the horror she'll watch. So she's in the other room because this is definitely not for her. And I'm watching this, and it's like this quiet part involving the mirror. And I hear this bell I've never heard in my life before being rung from the other room. And then my dog Drax looks frightened, and I'm like, "What's happening?" Of course, I know there's a logical explanation, and it's just someone gave her this cute little antique-looking bell. But it was just so creepy at the time because it was not a noise I've ever heard in this apartment.
and that's where you have to give props to Flanagan. He wrapped you in so good.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I can.
You want it. It's also like a mystery because you're trying to find out what's happening, what's going on, why it's going on, blah 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 blah. And so your eyes are glued to the screen, like your characters are glued to that mirror,
and you're on the edge of your seat. You know, it's just so well done. So, okay, so. So Haley says, to child Tim that we have to destroy this mirror. And we go back to the present where Tim and Kaylee enter the room with the mirror. They see themselves still standing in front of it. So it's one thing when they see themselves from outside the house, but they go back in and they now still see themselves standing in front of it. But there is now also the woman from before speaking. So it's Marisol. And Marisol approaches them speaking in the father's voice, saying, "I told you never to come in this room."
Oh.
So that was...
Doesn't stop.
And Kaylee just keeps repeating it's not real. Of course, this is after she killed her fiance and everything else. So she's just trying to keep it together, and this isn't real. And she looks down and now sees that grown Tim has left, and she's holding young Tim's hand. And he pulls away and runs. So now we have the timelines again kind of shifting together. And the woman smiles at Kaylee and she follows Tim. So we're back to the past, and Kaylee and Tim are running up the stairs, locking themselves in the room. And we see the mother break a plate and begin eating one of the pieces. So the door opens and Alan enters with the gun. And Marie crawls towards him and tries to lunge at him. And he puts the gun under her chin and she freezes. He unlocks the chain around her neck and she slowly stands. We then do a quick cut to Tim and Kaylee in the bathroom in present time with Kaylee on the floor. And Kaylee asks if he's still there. Tim says he was never there, that he's upstairs. Kaylee asks, how can he be sure? And he tries to reassure and opens the door, but the mother is standing on the other side and we get a flashback again.
Oh, my God.
Kaylee and Tim hold the door shut. Kaylee says they have to get downstairs. Tim says she's not gone. Kaylee says, you have to open the door and run downstairs. She opens the door and the two run down the hall. Marie lunges at them from down the hall and Kaylee hits her with the golf club.
Mm-hmm.
Tim runs down the stairs only to find the dad in front of the office. And while Kaylee runs down the hall into the room their mother was in, she opens the window and jumps out and hurts her leg on the landing. It's like a story up. And she gets up and limps to the front yard, still holding the golf club, and she sees two ghastly people standing in the window smiling.
Oh my god, that scene fucked me up. I'm sorry to curse, but like that's the accurate representation of what happened to me.
No, it is.
The mirror is just so mean.
It's I don't believe we saw these two people before.
Oh.
So this is where I'm, I know this now, but thinking at the time, if I'm remembering correctly, thinking like, what is that? Is that must be a past victim, because there's a reason she laid out all of the past victims before in such detail. Yes. Oh yeah, it's great. So
is the looking into the mirror from really close with the anchor thing, but we'll get to that.
Yes. Oh gosh, yeah. So at this point, what's the most effective scene to you up at this point, or most frightening scene?
The frightening scene, I have to say, is seeing, like, when he was holding the gun to the mother, and she gets up and is like almost conforming, because right before then you thought the dad and the mom were having like a quarrel. Like, I don't know how that sounds very light to what was actually going on.
Right.
But like, you figure they're on the different side, because obviously she's chained up, he's in control, blah 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 blah. Even if they're both being manipulated by the mirror, that's still what's happening.
Right.
She gets unchained.
More with
now they're on the same team.
Right.
And they're both ready to murder their own children. That scared me. I was like, oh goodness, this is far from over.
So I'm with you. Like that was the most disturbing thing of all to me. Like they have completely lost control. So
not completely. Oh, I'm so excited for the next scene.
So after seeing
coming up scene,
the two people in the window smiling in a very unnerving way, we go back to the present, and grown Tim is watching Alan walk down the hall, his seemingly dead father, and he's telling himself it's not real. And Alan fires the gun. Right when he fires the gun, it goes back to the past, and Kaylee is outside the house, and you can tell that she wants to protect her brother, so she goes back into the house. So Kaylee's very brave. And at one point she actually says, we're going to have to get very brave to her brother.
I feel like that's the line of the movie, kind of like the "we're here" in Poltergeist.
Yes,
I feel like we're gonna have to be very brave is the line of this movie.
Yeah. That or "ha." That was a great "ha."
That was a great line.
Yeah,
all right, I just got that phone.
Yes, Oculus, ha. That's just the tagline. So, Kaylee goes back in the house, and that's in the past. We're back in the present, where Kaylee walks into the room with the mirror. And there she sees her fiance's corpse standing in front of it with a smile. And she walks down the hall calling for Tim. As grown Kaylee is walking down the hall calling for her brother, flashes back to the past, where Kaylee is also walking down the same hall.
Flashback the movie, man.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So Tim gestures to pass Kaylee, but she doesn't understand. And then Marie lunges at her and knocks her to the ground, where she begins strangling her own daughter. After a few moments, she loosens her grip. She almost comes back to normal, and she kind of guides the gun. Even isn't this the part where she puts the gun and kind of gives a nod to Alan? Or no, or wait, I'm sorry. This is where Alan he shoots her from behind, right?
Yes, this is the murder of Marie, I believe.
Okay, so yes, so Kaylee grabs Tim and runs, while Alan is surrounded by the dead bodies of past victims of the mirror as he kills her. And she kind of gives, like, for the final gunshot, she puts the gun on her heart and nods at her husband, and you kind of get a sense that there's real life Marie somewhere in there, like, just in this. So all very
heartwarming.
Yeah, very heartwarming. The usual.
Put a smile on your face.
Yes. So Kaylee and Tim hide behind a door, watching until their father is gone. Then they run, grabbing golf clubs. They head to the office, where they begin to strike the mirror over and over and over again, but only to find that they've been hitting the wall, because the mirror will always protect itself. So they couldn't even land a single blow on the mirror.
Alan, how I got that scratch.
Exactly. So Alan enters the room, gun in hand, and points it at Kaylee. But Tim, young Tim, strikes his arm with the golf club, knocking the gun down. And what happens then?
Oh, probably my favorite scene in this movie.
Yes.
He holds the gun towards Alan. Alan is kind of looking at Tim, but you realize that there's a lot of hesitation.
Yes.
Almost like he wants him to pull the trigger. And then you see Alan give Tim the nod to pull the trigger.
Yes.
This is where the scratch of the mirror began, because as he pulls the trigger, it knocks Alan towards the mirror, and all hell breaks loose when this mirror gets scratched. You see all the victims. You feel like, oh, these kids are fricked. Like,
Yep.
And it was great because it showed that the parents they weren't completely under the control. Of course, they were not like, oh, this is an elaborate scheme to terrorize our children into shooting us so we can get a scratch on the mirror. But at the same time, this is kind of like Alan's last laugh, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm going down swinging.
Yep. And so the bodies of the past victims approach them from behind, and they're cornered against the wall. They open their mouths, and the sounds of alarms are heard, which is a scary visual in itself.
I was wearing headphones.
Oh, yeah.
It hurt.
You can't do that. So
I turned my phone down like a bunch.
At the same time that we hear the alarms, it goes to the present, and Tim is in the room with the mirror on the floor, covering his ears to block out the alarms, and he's yelling for his sister. Mm-hmm. And we cut to a young Kaylee in the office, and she sees her mother in the mirror. She walks towards her mother holding out her arms, and her mother looks totally normal and beautiful. And they embrace basically through the mirror. And as she's embracing her mother, older Tim walks to the kill switch, and he sees only the mirror. And he's like, I'm just done with this. And he makes the egg timer go off early, and it swings, and then we hear it hit, but it doesn't hit the mirror. It hits flesh. And that's where we see that Kaylee was in front of it, and the mirror is unharmed, and the axe went through her neck area. Mm-hmm. And Tim is like, my God, what have I done? In the past, it shows Kaylee making Tim promise that when they're older and stronger, and this just touched my heart. And I mean, it's just so messed up that when we're older and stronger, we're going to come back to destroy it. Promise me. Because young Tim was being taken off in a different direction than young Kaylee, because young Tim had killed her father. Mm-hmm. So, and, for all the police know, killed the mother and everyone. So, as young Tim is being put in the cop car, she's like screaming, promise me. And then he nods like, I promise. And then they go to the present where Tim is being arrested.
Because police were called.
Yes, because the police were called one time. The first time he called the police, it was correct. The house let him, knowing what was going to happen. Not the house, the mirror. The Lasser glass let him call it the first time, didn't let him call the second time. So then we see a bunch of flashbacks and fours between the past and the present. And it's young Tim saying it wasn't me, it was the mirror. And then it's present Tim in 2013 telling the cops it wasn't me, it was the mirror. And as older Tim is driving away, and this is when I fully fell in love with this movie, because look, there's been a lot of horror movies where through the first half or the first two of the three acts, they did everything correctly, but they never knew how to end it, or they didn't know what the cause was.
This movie had a beautiful ending.
Oh, so they're driving away. Grown Tim is in the back of the car, and he looks into the house, into the window. He sees the corpses of his entire family, his sister and father and mother, all grown in the window of the house, staring out at him.
Glassy eyes, smile.
Glassy eyes, yep. And they look all the Marisol eyes. And now they are the latest victims. And fade to black, the credits roll. And that's the end of this disturbing movie, Oculus.
Oh, my goodness. The first words I said after this movie ended was, wow. Because the ending hits you just as hard as like the scenes where it started the climax.
Yes.
Because I feel like usually towards the end of the movie it starts to die down. That didn't happen. It just ended. Like of course, like the murder.
So
and everything.
rare. Of course, what?
Of course, there's the ending and everything kind of like showed he's getting in the cop car. They're going away from the house. That's kind of done deal.
Yeah, but it's not a good ending for anyone.
No.
His whole family's dead. He's clearly messed up forever. So there was a let's go through a little bit of some fear facts here, some fun trivia. Mm-hmm. There was a WWE Easter egg in the movie. Did you catch it?
I did not.
So during the auction where the mirror is being sold, the mirror was acquired from the Levesque estate. Triple H's real name is Paul Levesque. So there you go. That was the one thing they got in, and they were able to get that in because it had already premiered at the Toronto Film Festival when WB came, or the TFF, when WB came on board, but they were able to put that in audio-wise. So Karen Gillan, who we know as, what was her character's name in Guardians of the Galaxy?
Nebula.
Yes, thank you. So she had to go back to film some additional scenes after the movie was complete, but they had to put a wig on her because she had already cut her hair for one movie, Not Another Happy Ending, and then subsequently shaved it off for her role in Guardians of the Galaxy. So that's just kind of neat. They did a good job because at no point did I realize she was wearing a wig. Mm-mm. Hey folks, I just want to take another quick moment to thank you for listening to Horror Movies Hub Presents. And if you want more original, high-quality horror podcasts, then check out our friends over at boxofficepulp.com. It is a very entertaining podcast featuring Cody, Jamie, and HMH's own head writer, Mike. If you love movies and horror, then you need to check out boxofficepulp.com. Their latest podcast is a commentary and play-along game for the Escape the Undertaker interactive Netflix movie. That episode is a lot of fun, their show is a lot of fun, and the folks at Box Office Pulp are a lot of fun, and they have a wealth of horror knowledge. Just visit boxofficepulp.com for more horror entertainment. Now, back to the show. Okay, so I wrote down the actual 3 shots of when young Tim is watching the television and the static comes up. If you slow-mo all of that, one is a close-up of adult Kaylee, another one is a close-up of adult Kaylee in a different position, and then the final one is of adult Kaylee with her mouth open as if she's screaming like she did at the end of the movie. So the timeline in this movie was amazing. It really is, and also primarily in the house. Any pictures in the house show either reflections like a mirror would or water. So if you look at all the paintings or pictures in the house, it's either showing you a reflection of the scene, or it's a scene, or it's a picture showing some sort of water, which also reflects.
It's clever.
Yeah, very clever. I thought so. And apparently it was very difficult to make this movie because when you make a movie centered around a mirror, it's very hard to shoot. Mirrors reflect.
Well, yeah, because you have to, yeah. I didn't think about that because you were so absorbed in the movie, but yeah, that's kind of intriguing how you could film a mirror without, seeing the whole set.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And it's pretty cool. So this, Flanagan, his whole career changed because of this, and he continued to work with a lot of these people, like Annalise Basso, who was the young Kaylee. He would lay her, he put her in Ouija, Origin of Evil. She does an amazing job. And of course, he worked with his wife a bunch on lots of things like Gerald's Game. And, also Hush. And I think, what else was she in? Doesn't matter. Lots of things. Oh, The Haunting of Hill House. So continued working with a lot of the actors from this movie and writers. So pretty cool. Not only did it start his career on a mainstream level, he takes his roots with him, including the mirror. That mirror, after he filmed it, has shown up in every project he's done. So it was in Gerald's Game. It was in Hush. It was in Haunting of Hill House, which was probably easy just to put on a wall because that house was creepy. It was also in Bly Manor, and so I'm going to assume it'll be in the upcoming release of Midnight Mass.
Wow.
So
we'll have to look out for it.
Yeah, look for the Lasser Glass.
This movie I'm a fan of. And let me say this now.
Yes.
I haven't seen a lot of movies. I have seen very few when it comes to horror. This is my favorite movie in general. Wow. I loved this movie. This movie was incredible. Every single part of it, I was involved. And the reason I think you brought me onto horror, and I think the reason I'm going to stay is because the good horror movies will make you want to stay.
Absolutely.
Because you feel everything that these characters feel, and it just makes you want to experience that rush again.
Yeah, you buy into it, and it's even like with the bleak ending, it's very rewatchable. In fact, I would recommend to watch it at least twice because you just can't pick up on everything. I mean, I had to leave some stuff out because we can't do like a 4-hour podcast. But man,
this goes all out to all the people who are currently doing laundry or doing something in the background. Listen to this background. Take a break from all the chores. Stop your workout. Watch this movie.
Dim the lights.
10 out of 10.
Turn up the speakers. Absolutely.
I rated Poltergeist. I rated it pretty high. I might want to move Poltergeist down a little bit because of how high the ceiling this has made it for it. I loved this movie. 10 out of 10.
All right. Very good.
You have some stipulations, though.
What's that?
There's a little bit of plot holes towards the end of the movie that I want to go into.
Okay.
But this is only because these plot holes don't really matter because this would only happen at the end of the movie.
Okay.
But there is one. It's just you got to understand. I don't understand why, and I don't think we'll ever get the answer why because like, what motivated this mirror to kill a bunch of people? Why is this mirror sentient? Because like it uses the pictures of the victims, not like there's no haunting of an original victim because like it uses the
first known victim is Lasser himself.
Yes, and you don't see him till like you see all the victims, so it makes you wonder like. What is the sentience? What is it? Is it its own force? Is it somebody who haunting the mirror? Like, it's a big why.
That it wasn't explained because a lot of times when movies try to explain things, it messes up the movie.
Yeah, I'm glad it doesn't. And the other thing is that
so it's not really a plot hole so much as a mystery.
Yeah, it's just but the plot hole I want to say is not again it's something that would happen after the movie. There's no plot holes for this movie. The reason I don't think the sequel would work is because there are cameras. The biggest thing is like they showed Tim on the tablet about how he set off the switch for the kill. But the thing was that was in the same room where she murdered her fiance.
Yes.
So they would have picked that up as well. So they would know that these characters went insane.
Right. Like, why did she suddenly stab her fiance and why did he suddenly kill the sister? So that would be an interesting aftermath thing.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to get at. Like, doing a sequel on this, I don't know if it would work unless it's just like for people that are
prequel would work.
A prequel would definitely.
Of like the origin of the Lasser Glass.
I would love a prequel of this movie, but a sequel would be a little difficult. The only way I could see it working is if you had characters that love the supernatural and try to explore it, kind of like how Kaylee did.
Right.
It kind of tempted because obviously I feel like you look at this footage, kind of like a found footage kind of thing, which we kind of roll our eyes at, but that's what it's going to turn into, where obviously these characters went insane.
Right. And so aside from the mirror itself, and this goes back to like what a sequel could do, aside from the mirror itself, the main villain in this was Marisol, which was the mirror's last victim prior to the Russell family. Now, going back to your camera thing, Marisol Chavez, I want to say, was murdered by the mirror in 1975, so no convenient recording devices back then.
Of course.
Most people didn't have any kind of video camera in 1975 hanging around their household.
But now they do. That's what I'm. Yeah.
Right. So you get that modern technology with the Russell family, and that's when they're able to capture some stuff. And then again, the mirror has power over the things around it. Could it just erase some of that footage?
Yeah. That's another thing to think about. But they got the footage of Well, I guess that would be what the mirror wanted, was that footage so it would blame him for the murder.
Right, because the real victim in all of this is the young man, right? It's the brother. Because not only is he the only survivor, now his entire family has been murdered by his family in some shape or form.
And he's already been convicted of murder once, so he's not having a fun time.
Right, especially as an adult. And going back to the sequel idea, so if Marisol was the main villain in this movie because that was their last victim before the Russells, that means a sequel thing would be the Russells being the next ghosts. So that would be interesting.
Yes, that would be cool. Kind of like a Jumanji kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where it's they get new owners of Jumanji, they played the game, and they're like, oh, someone's already played.
Exactly. So as much as all the spirits still roam in there, it's like the latest victim is the one that is the next hunter, primary hunter.
That would be really cool to see. Like I said, you don't have to. I already love the movie. You don't have to add anything to it, but it'd be cool to see what you can branch off to from this.
Yes, exactly. And I looked into if there was any plans for a sequel, and there doesn't seem to be any. So
that's a shame, but also not a shame.
But also not right,
lose win kind of thing. Like you never. It's just it's so good. You want to see more, but it's also so good that you don't want to see more because you want to make sure it stays pure.
Yeah, and I really don't think that Flanagan has done anything since Oculus that was a bomb. Like he did Before I Wake. I think he did Hush next. He did Before I Wake, which is another, I think that's a solid one. That stars Kate Bosworth, and it's, again, about an orphan child whose dreams and nightmares manifest physically while she sleeps.
Oh, yes, the beautiful.
So he likes that theme a lot. And Gerald's Game was good. Haunting a Hill House, my favorite ghost story ever. He also did Dr. Sleep, the Shining sequel, which I loved. He did something masterful there, which is...
And that's a big deal.
Well, the Shining book ends very differently than the Shining movie. And what he did in Dr. Sleep, written by Stephen King, of course, since the book ended differently, the Dr. Sleep is a little bit different. So what Flanagan did with Dr. Sleep, the movie, is he fit in stuff from the original Shining source material, the novel itself, and reconciled that with the movie starring Jack Nicholson, and somehow tied it all together in Dr. Sleep. I thought masterfully, and I just love that movie. So he hasn't done anything bad so far since Oculus, and so I'm wondering if it's also not tempting for him to go back to it, because it is such a perfectly told movie. It probably does send a stronger message that this was just the only movie ever made.
I don't have a problem with that, but there's so much potential.
So what's your favorite scene? Not necessarily the scariest, just your favorite. Was
my
it
favorite
the
scene
plant part where she's
No. I'm sorry, but that end scene that you were like where you fell in love with the movie, that was my favorite scene. But I couldn't say that during discussion because that was a huge spoiler. You wanted to get there, acclimated. No, that was awesome. Seeing all three of them smile like nothing happened. Everything went back to normal. You're Jack, the exact situation that you left it in. Yes. Nothing was solved. You're still boned. It doesn't care.
You only made things worse by bringing me back into your life. And that's what I also liked about this, is seemingly if she never went to the auction house, never used her fiance's pull to get the mirror and all that, this would have just gone on to haunt another family. Exactly. Like the mirror isn't just drawn. It's only drawn to the people that it's around. You know, it's not like it only haunted, young Kaylee. It's like, nope, goes back centuries ago. So sometimes it's just better to leave things dead.
Mm-hmm. Another thing to think about is, like, how did the mirror feel, especially towards this family? Because this is the only record that the mirror had being scratched.
Right. Yeah, its only wound came from this family.
Mm-hmm. So, because like I mentioned, the mirror is just being plain mean at some points, kind of like taunting, like the call when the fiance was dead. Maybe it was personal, because like this family is the only one that's touched this mirror.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, that's very true. And apparently this movie is somewhat inspired by some stories of H.P. Lovecraft. And in the sense that Flanagan chose not to explain the mirror's origins, because one of the things he liked about Lovecraft and Lovecraftian stories was there was some sort of alien force or something going on. It was often never explained in Lovecraft stuff. And he said that I think the actual quote from Flanagan is, "Evil is in a world that doesn't need to have an answer."
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Should we put that on the box of the movie?
Yeah, we should personally go out and do that. I'll go to all the blockbusters in my area.
Final Go Productions / HMH edition.
And if you want more of this, there was a Bollywood remake of the movie.
Oh, great!
It's called Deborah, See Your Evil.
You know that the stuff they put on books, like a New York's bestseller. Can I put like Intern of Evil favorite on top of the box?
Yes, exactly.
That'd be pretty cool.
I actually want to check out the Bollywood movie because Mike Flanagan served as the executive producer on it. So, that may not be so, but it's not going to stand up to this. I mean, this is just
it's so beautiful.
And this was also co-produced by Jason Blum of Blumhouse fame.
Oh, I always thought it was Big House because I saw the production at the beginning, and I was like, why do they call it BH? Just call it what it stands for. And I thought it was Big House because it was a house, you know.
Blumhouse, and I appreciate any vehicle that gives us lots of horror, and Blumhouse has, but it's very hit and miss with their stuff.
Well, they definitely hit.
Oh, this was a huge hit, and yeah, so that's Oculus. So your second major horror movie. You've gone Poltergeist, you've gone Oculus. We'll have to see what creeps up next. Yes.
I see what you did there. Creeps up next.
So I could say that Poltergeist will probably be the only. It'll be one of the rare family horror type movies we were.
Yeah.
That would change the genre. Of just how ghost stories were told and that really should have been a rated R movie. Remember, it was Spielberg's influence on the MPAA that convinced him to change it to PG. So, but unlike Poltergeist, we didn't see any current victims. We saw plenty of victims in this one. What was your favorite death scene?
Well, there wasn't too many. There's only 3 technically. Oh, 4 technically because the fiance. Maybe not the scene, but kind of like just the surrounding scenes behind the fiance's death. Because, like I said, that was like the start of the end.
Yeah,
where you start to realize that
it came out of nowhere.
Yeah, it came out of nowhere. The ghost said, "I'm not screwing around. This isn't a petty game. You're trying to film me to prove something. I'm here to murder you." Right.
Yeah.
So I think I love that surrounding kind of like those group of scenes surrounding the fiance's death because that was again the kickstart.
The creepiest scene to me was actually towards the beginning when she was in their warehouse looking in the mirror and the figures moved behind her. The covered figures with sheets. And that was just very creepy to me. My favorite death scene was actually the end of the movie because I can often predict the end of movies of any genre just for whatever. Sometimes it's obvious. Sometimes it's just me with a lucky guess or whatever. I did not predict that I expected the brother to die. I did not expect Kaylee to die. And I thought for sure the brother would, but then of course you look at the whole story and it makes sense that he would be the survivor. And the way she died didn't surprise me. I kind of expected when I saw that they had the kill switch. Yeah, it's like, well, that's going to come into play. I didn't know if it was going to come into play for a happy ending, like the brother and sister survived this ordeal, or if it was going to be tragic. But I figured if it'd be tragic, it'd be with the brother. So I liked that death as much as I love Kaylee and I don't want to see her die. It did shock me because that's not the ending I was expecting, which is another reason I love Flanagan.
We're not going to get Karen Gillan again.
What's that?
It also means, sadly, we're not going to get Karen Gillan again.
Yeah, well, see, if there was a sequel, she could be the creepy ghost. She could be the new Marisol.
So cool.
Yeah, she's just an amazing talent. And one of Scotland's greatest gifts to us.
Absolutely. You can't even tell she's not American.
Cinema, yes. And, I mean, she I'm sure those who knew her in the Doctor Who days or whatever knew, but I did not know until.
Was it Doctor Who British? I don't know.
Yeah, but I don't know if she kept her Scottish accent or what. I don't watch. I don't know. Either way, but yeah, it's
what a great movie.
Yeah, frightening. One of the best haunting stories, I'll say, movie wise. I think there is. Like, it's so I don't want to say it's underrated because it's just gotten great praises and it launched his career, but I don't think it's brought up enough because it's 8 years old. That to me is still very modern.
I never heard of it, but that to me that means nothing.
Well, I mean, still though, like people like for instance, you could never have seen Halloween, but I'm sure you've seen the trailers and
Conjuring, stuff like that.
And your friends would talk about it, right? I'm sure you heard back in high school or whatever people talking about Conjuring and stuff, which we'll never watch those movies because I think that's a garbage.
All right, heard it here first. Probably not actually heard it here first, but you heard it here again.
Yeah, I just think that franchise. Okay, the only movies I like, Annabelle Comes Home is good because it's not trying to convince me it's based on a true story and it's just a monster movie of demons. That's awesome. Let's see, I don't like any of the actual Conjuring movies at all. The first one would be the best and the most watchable, but I thought it was overproduced. And my main beef with it is that real life couple that all these stories are based on, which is the same couple that went to rid the evil Amityville house in real life of demons and all that. They were horrible people in real life, including allegations of child sex abuse. And Hollywood has dressed them up to be this romantic couple, and they were charlatans. I mean, okay, if you truly have a career off being demonologists, you are not in a legitimate line of business, in my opinion. And so, no offense to anyone's beliefs out there or whatever. I can be the guy you laugh at, like, oh, he doesn't know the greatest trick ever played was the devil convincing people he didn't exist. But, I don't believe the devil exists or anything like that. So these movies I don't believe in ghosts, but Flanagan did such a good job with this movie that I was creeped out by this mirror.
Yeah, I was looking at a mirror a little bit differently after I saw this movie.
Oh, for sure. I mean, my wife ringing a bell she found gave me the creeps during this.
My dad. It was just my dad. He wasn't doing anything weird. It was just my dad.
Well, with this movie, all he needs to be is your dad. Creepy.
Oh my god!
Like, I don't need to see my parents anytime soon. But going back to the other franchise I can't stand, none of their movies truly instilled fear in me, so it just seemed silly to me, except for the Annabelle Comes Home. That's pretty good. But all the other ones trying to convince me it's a true story and center around the sweet romantic couple who in real life that's the real horror story. I just don't, and it was just overproduced and too, like, Flanagan masterfully used special effects in this movie. It wasn't crammed down your throat, and so when he used them,
you didn't even notice there were special effects. You just thought this was just the movie.
Right.
There's not a single part of my movie where I was just like, oh, that was cheap, or like, oh, you think of production. Not a single part of this movie I thought of production because I was that absorbed into it.
Exactly. Now I'm, and no matter how many times I watch this, I buy in, and I am devastated by the end of it that that Kaylee dies and this poor man is tortured, and every time it gets me. It's like gets me in the feels and frightens me every time I see it. So I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I very much so. Like I said, favorite movie of all time right now.
Awesome. So what was your previous favorite movie before Oculus? So the audience, our listeners can have an understanding of how horror has already shifted in your life.
It's going to be funny to them because they're going to think it's like this big critically acclaimed movie, but it's actually a movie I already referenced in this little episode, which is Jumanji. Because I just have so much love for
Jumanji?
The good one.
They're all good. I like them all.
I don't.
You don't like the one with The Rock and
Kevin Hart and all them? No, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And
I like Jumanji being what it was at first. I didn't
Karen
like
Gillan
started game. But Jumanji was probably my favorite movie just because I have a lot of family ties with that movie. There's a lot of connection I feel with family with that movie. I enjoyed Robin Williams, who's like a childhood actor for me. May he rest in peace.
Yes.
And that was just a movie that I loved. There really wasn't a reason behind it. I just loved it. This movie, I have a bunch of reasons to love it.
Yes, and you should go back and watch the 2019 Jumanji because you'll see more of Karen Gillan.
Well, there you go. What a great way to connect these movies together. Shout out to Karen Gillan.
1995 Jumanji was your previous favorite, which great selection. I mean, my all-time favorite is going to be The Goonies.
Well, I know that.
Right, and then Clue and Princess Bride are mixed somewhere in there.
Also,
but
that.
As far as horror goes, I mean, this isn't my favorite, but this is probably my favorite ghost movie.
Which is good because
Flanagan created my favorite ghost series, so he definitely has a knack for ghost stuff.
So, what you could take away from this is that Flanagan's good.
He's amazing. He is, in my book, he is the new master of, I'm a huge Alfred Hitchcock fan, and this, to me, Flanagan's the new master of suspense because he not only creates fear, but he has you on the edge of your seat.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
very good. I said, knowing no horror coming into this, I look at Flanagan as a godly figure to me now because of what he brought to the table.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And we'll have to look at some of his other movies as we continue on this venture with our Intern of Evil, Christian Conley. But that is Oculus. We are highly recommending Oculus, and so you are sold on horror now. You'll continue to be our intern.
That was the notch. Of course, Poltergeist made it fun, but this was the step, because again, it's way different how the pace and how heavy it was, and knowing how much I love this, I'm not going away anytime soon.
Awesome, very good. Well, we don't want you to. We want you to stick around. And very good. Well, I need to go and watch an Impact pay-per-view and talk about it in a few hours. So I'm going to shift my brain from the horrors of cinema to the
horrors of wrestling.
Of professional wrestling. That should be a good pay-per-view. I just have to talk about The Plane Ride from Hell first, which is a real-life horror story that you can listen to by tuning into Smart Wrestling Fan specifically. If you become a Patreon member for as little as $5 a month, Smart Wrestling Fan, you get so much more, including me co-hosting several shows with the podfather of wrestling himself, Joe Negron. So check out Smart Wrestling Fan. Shout out to them. Check out us, horrormovieshub.com. You can also follow Horror Movies Hub on Twitter, which is at Final Girl Productions, and just go to horrormovieshub.com and you'll see where to find us, and follow our stuff, watch our videos, listen to our podcasts, and we got a major upcoming giveaway to celebrate Halloween. So I'll go into that more in the next episode, but very good. Any shout outs or anything, Christian?
Josh Flanagan. Not Josh Flanagan. I forgot his first name already. Terrible shout out.
I thought you were just going to shout out one of your friends or something.
Yeah, shout out to him.
Shout out to Mike Flanagan.
I got mixed up with the internet personality, I know. But director Flanagan, Karen Gillan, amazing.
Both very
they're not going to care about our shout out, but I want it to be known that I care about that shout out because that was amazing.
Exactly. And you know who else was a major fan of this movie?
Who was?
If for whatever reason you haven't seen Oculus and you got spoiled by it from our review and you want to go see it, you're in good hands because Stephen King also loved the movie.
Good. That is a great thing for to have like one of the godfathers of horror love your movie.
And he's the king of horror. And so I don't know how they I think they were connected before they did Dr. Sleep. I'm not sure, but he was also a big fan of Flanagan's Dr. Sleep. But I know that King loved this movie. So
he didn't even like The Shining. So
he hated The Shining. He hated it. He did not like what Stanley Kubrick did to his characters in the novel. The Shelley Duvall character was this brave woman in the movie. She's this frantic, screaming woman that's of little use. He didn't like the casting of Jack Nicholson because the thing that the story told in the book was a normal man who slowly lost his mind. And when you cast Jack Nicholson, you get someone crazy right off the bat because he just looked crazy. He's like, so you took someone who looked crazy and just made him crazier. That's not as creepy.
So, yeah.
But I liked the movie and I also like the novel, and those two can coexist. I've never understood fans who are like, that movie's not like the book. I like it when it's not like the book. If I read the book, that means I know the ending. I don't want to know the ending. So.
I know people from my generation will know this. Percy Jackson books.
Oh, yes.
A lot of people hated the movie. But you got to understand that it's very rare that a movie and a book are identical.
Sure. And
I have the Harry Potter collection 2 feet away from me on books. I can tell you all the differences they have on the movies.
Nice.
I honestly think,
think
of it as watching it for the first time.
And the book.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Which do you prefer, the Potter books or movies?
Books. They have a little bit more details, and I do think some books are written well. But I do have preferences of movies over books. I like the Prisoner of Azkaban movie over the book because I thought the movie was amazing. Yeah, but that's for a different podcast.
That is, and that's for a less scary podcast. Yeah. But thank you, Christian, for joining us on this episode of Horror Movies Hub Presents. Keep listening for more episodes that will feature horror news, celeb interviews, and of course, more revisiting of horror movies with our kind, evil intern. Until next time, everyone, have a great day.